press point. My name is Ambrosi. I'm the new chief of mission in Bosnia and Herzegovina for IOM. We have the pleasure to have with us today our chief of cabinet, the chief of cabinet of the Director General Antonio Vitorino. The chief of cabinet with us today is Mr. Eugenio Ambrosi. Mr. Eugenio Ambrosi arrived on Tuesday in Bosnia and Herzegovina, and he traveled with us to Bihać and to Lipa in particular, but also Gorici. We visited together with him the transit centers in Bihać with the Minister of Security, and then he moved here to Sarajevo, where we held a number of good engagement discussions with various levels of the state, cantonal and local authorities, including the meeting with Mr. Chairman, Mr. Tegeltia, and today an engagement at the highest level, including our Director General with the advisors of the presidency. We're very glad to have him. It's the first time that IOM arrives in country with such a high-level visit. This was to mark our full engagement in the area and in support to the government when it comes to the migration situation. And we are working towards an inclusive way forward to some of the challenges, but hopefully some of the opportunities that the country is facing in the area of migration. I will leave the floor to Mr. Eugenio Ambrosi for some of his remarks, some of his conclusions and comments emerged from this three-day visit, and then we will take a few questions. We are not going to take many questions because we are on our way out to the airport, so bear with us if we're going to catch you on the way. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura, and good afternoon to all of you. Thank you for being here. Very quickly, a few points from my side. First of all, the reason for my visit is twofold. One was, of course, to have a direct impression and see firsthand the activities that the IOM is carrying out alongside partners in the UN, in the government and the NGO world in response to the migratory flows that are coming through Bosnia and Herzegovina. And the second reason was to engage with the government and to, through the presence of myself coming from the Office of the Director General, to indicate and reiterate to the authorities our interest and our willingness in increasing our cooperation on migration governance in Bosnia and Herzegovina, and to increase the level of cooperation and support that IOM is already extending to the authorities, both at the municipal, cantonal, as well as central level. As Laura said, I started my visit in Unasana Canton. I visited alongside the Minister of Security and representative of the international community, the transit center in Gorici, I don't know if I pronounce it correctly, and Lipa. You have already heard me in the press point after this visit with the Minister of Security. I would just repeat that I was particularly pleased to see, first of all, the level of coordination among all the actors involved under the leadership of the Minister of Security. That I think has brought the level of response to a very good level. And I was also very pleased to see the improvement in the temporary shelter in Lipa, as well as the progress on the work of the construction of the permanent settlement in the transit center in Lipa, which I understand from the Minister should be hopefully ready in a few weeks' time from now. As far as the discussion that we held with the authorities, They focused on a couple of specific points from our side. The first is, of course, that the humanitarian response to the migratory flows coming through Bosnia and Herzegovina will continue and needs to continue because the needs of the people are there. But at the same time, we think we should start discussing and planning on an overall more comprehensive and more holistic governance system of migratory flows in this country. And this means starting to look at the possibility of more longer-term solution than simply the temporary housing and sheltering of the group of migrants that are here right now. More longer-term solution that has to do with the possibility of returning people voluntarily to the country of origin for those that have no possibility to continue their journey. Family reunification whenever that is feasible and possible for those that have close member of their family illegally residing in other countries, in Europe or elsewhere. The support to the authorities in their discussion for readmission programs with the country of origin, and any other aspects that can contribute to a better, more organized system of governing the flows. Another aspect that we underline and where IOM is already engaged, but where we would like to increase our engagement, is the support to the local communities that are hosting a group of migrants. The importance of involving the local community, not just the local authorities, but the actual community and citizens living in this community, in order to ease the difficulties and the challenges that they might have because of the presence of this group of migrants, and any other measure that can make basically the life of everybody easier at the community level is one of the areas that we want to strengthen, including strengthening the work that IOM has already been doing here in terms of social cohesion and working with the youth to improve their condition and their situation. And the last point that we think also is particularly relevant is, of course, that we want to continue to support and build the capacity of the authorities to take increasingly more and more control and charge of the management and the governance of migratory flows. While there are obviously challenges with the people coming through in Bosnia and Herzegovina, we think that this is a situation that is manageable if all the parties involved are contributing. This also, of course, includes the need to have to look at what on the national territory can be put in place so that the challenge does not rest only on certain part of the country and certain canton. With my visit, I hope that we have opened the channel of discussion at every level, local as well as at the top level in the state, to continue this discussion and to move some of these issues forward. Of course, there is the need to also look, when we talk about long-term solution, to look at the regional aspect of this situation. People are coming to Bosnia and Herzegovina, but they are either on their way to somewhere else, or in any case, there are implications at the regional level. I think it's important that we find ways of increasing and improving regional cooperation. That will involve, of course, not only countries immediately surrounding Bosnia and Herzegovina, but also other actors such as the European Union, that of course has an important, besides sharing a border with an external border in Bosnia and Herzegovina, has of course a major role to play in the overall governance of migratory flows that are at least intended to direct themselves to Europe. I would stop here in terms of general remark. I would just like to add maybe that I think the overall atmosphere and the overall discussion with the authorities and with partners has been, in my view, extremely positive, and so I leave with a sense of optimism in terms of the progress that can be made in this discussion in the weeks and months to come. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Eugenio. We are going to take a couple of questions, I think 2 or 3 questions altogether. 1, 2, 3. Okay. For now we take these 3. Please.
My name is Teo Zoric, the national TV of Bosnia and Herzegovina. My question is, you said all positive things about this situation in Bosnia and Herzegovina. There has been around 7 million euros spent on the camps in Bosnia and Herzegovina. The state of the camps is far from perfect. Another thing that we heard from the migrants inside the camps is when somebody from IOM is coming, everything seems much better than in reality. How do you comment that? And the second question is, if everything is so good, why are 3,000 people, 3,000 migrants sleeping in the woods of Unasana canton and on the streets of Sarajevo?
We're going to take a couple of other questions and we'll address them all together. Please, the second question was coming from the lady with the coat, please. Yes. No, together. Okay, sorry. Please. Okay, we are going to take the lady with the blue vest, please.
Yes. My name is Saida Hashmush, Al Jazeera Balkans. Bosnia was largely criticized by the EU for the lack of coordination between different levels of the government. So you said that there might be some kind of progress in that regard. Can you tell something more about that?
One more.
Sorry, yes,
Sir,
please.
do you have translation? Because
Yes.
my questions are usually very complicated. Thank you very much.
Okay, then maybe I better not have the translation.
Yes. Ama prestani me zvati Aida, ja sam Adisa. Ovako, situacija je sljedeća da nedavno smo imali vrlo nemile scene kada govorimo o kampu Lipa. Čak je došlo do toga da je veliki dio kampa zapaljen. Mi još uvijek ne znamo detalje toga što se dogodilo, ko je odgovoran za to. Mnogo se pričalo o tome, pa su čak i pojedini iz vlasti Unsko-Sanskog kantona govorili da je se sve i dogodilo po nagovoru službenika IOM-a, da je to uradila jedna grupa migranata, da je bilo određenih svjedočanstava. Molim vas da nam pojasnite tu situaciju, imate li neke nove informacije? Druga stvar je, nekako se uvijek govorilo od samog početka migrantske krize da sve što se radi na terenu jeste privremenog karaktera jer ti ljudi ne žele ostati u Bosni i Hercegovini, a vi sve nama predstavljate neku agendu u kojoj kažete da se trebaju tražiti dugoročna rješenja. Ovo je prvi put da čujemo nešto tako, jer sve vrijeme svih ovih godina je bilo kratkoročna rješenja, da se preživi zima, da dođe proljeće i slično. Da li će onda kamp Lipa ostati jedini kamp koji će biti to dugoročno rješenje ili ćete pak nastaviti zajedno sa vašim europskim partnerima ukoliko se broj migranata u Bosni i Hercegovini krene povećavati, ponovo vršiti pritisak evo, na vlast Unsko-Sanskog kantona, Sarajevskog, da i dalje prave te, evo da tako kažem, trajne kampove kao što ste sami malo spomenuli.
Yes, I'm going to address some of the questions and Eugenio will complement. The temporary reception centers or the transit centers that IOM has set up together with the authorities tend to respect as much as possible key humanitarian standards, sphere standards, as well as all the key standards that are needed to make sure that there is a human and human rights-based also way in which accommodation is provided. Of course, those standards tend to be stretched when the number of people accommodated inside the centers goes beyond what is acceptable. So there's been moments in order to make sure that those who were most in need had an accommodation where maybe some of the standards were breached, but that was temporarily, and then at the moment, for instance, all our reception centers, all the reception centers that we're running with the support of the state, are below their capacities. So at the moment, the situation is increasingly better, including COVID prevention measures, which has been a key feature of all of the support. When it comes to the people sleeping rough, IOM, together with the Service of Foreigners Affairs, has conducted the first pilot initiative looking at counting and assessing people sleeping outside or residing not in temporary reception centers. And the preliminary estimation points to 1,700 people. So we are far from the 3,000 that have been mentioned many, many times. Many of those people have been reached by the humanitarian community, offering relocation opportunities into the transit centers. Were not willing to be relocated, and those who were willing to be relocated have been relocated and accommodated. So really, there are a lot of efforts ongoing towards making sure that the humanitarian support reaches those most in need. When it comes to the I think the other point, and then I will leave the floor to Eugenio, the issue of cooperation with local authorities, state authorities. It's improving by the day, and we see an enormous amount of efforts in bringing all the partners together and bringing all the stakeholders together. Those efforts are led by the Minister of Security, and together with him, of course, the Service for Foreigners Affairs, who's our key counterpart when it comes to the management of the daily running of the operations. And of course, under their leadership, we continue to maintain strengthened dialogue with all the cantonal authorities, municipal authorities, who are shouldering some of the burden when it comes to the migrants' accommodation.
Two quick comments on the question. Well, on the adding on the coordination aspect, of course, I cannot judge the level or the efficiency of the coordination before I came here. What I can say is that what I've seen in terms of the work being done on the transit centers in Unasana, and what I heard from every component of the authority I've met, is the fact that coordination under the responsibility of the Minister of Security has improved, and everybody has been referring at all levels to the Minister of Security as the person in charge of coordinating these aspects of migration. And what I've seen as far as the LIPA construction of the new permanent site, and also the work done in the temporary shelter, that coordination works. Now, whether at other level or in any other aspects there are issues related with that, I don't know, and I cannot judge. But what I've seen on those specific aspects, I think I can only have a positive impression of it. So that's the that's the impression I will live with. Now, on the LIPA, the fire, and the temporary situation versus more permanent. First of all, I have met with the Prime Minister, the Minister of Interior, and the Commissioner of Police of the Unasana Canton. We have also met with the Mayor of Biach. Nobody has raised with me any issue, allegation, or suspicion in terms of any type of involvement whatsoever of IOM staff with the event in LIPA that led to the burning of the site. What happened, not only I don't know precisely, and who is responsible, I don't know. I don't know if anybody knows, but I don't. And of course, investigating those events is a responsibility of the authorities. It's not a responsibility of IOM for a variety of reasons. First of all, because we are not equipped to be an investigative agency. And second, because of course it's a type of event that the authority will have to look into it to see if there are people responsible and what level of responsibility they have. But definitely there has been, not only there has been no involvement of IOM staff in the event, but there would be no reason for any IOM involvement in the event. We would have nothing to gain or to win from burning a camp that we are handling and managing, and now we have to rebuild. So, beside all the consequences that implied. On the long-term solution versus temporary, you know, when the only thing that you can do to handle a flow like the one we are seeing now is to house people or shelter people somewhere, waiting for them to find their own way, which almost inevitably they find only to be sent back. Or even if they're not sent back, then those places they left open in the transit center are filled with other people coming in. That's not a temporary solution. That is making permanent a situation that brings no solution. What we are saying is humanitarian assistance will be needed because these people are in need of humanitarian assistance. They need shelter, they need food, they need whatever it is that they need in order to survive. But that the way to handle the situation is to look at how we can first recognize that migration happens everywhere in the world. Flows will continue, not just here, anywhere else. Here are of a size that are still manageable because the number are manageable. And that in order to tackle it properly and to reduce the suffering of the people, to reduce the challenge for the community, to reduce the pressure on the authority, we need to have a strategy and a migration governance system that doesn't look only at the immediate solution for those that are coming and need food and shelter, but it looks at how we handle the mobility issue in general. So the border control, so the fight against trafficking and smuggling, the return for those that have no right to stay here or to reach somewhere else, the asylum for those that are legitimately entitled to have asylum. These are all, and other measures, these are all components of a migration policy that needs to be comprehensive and not focus on one aspect, because that one aspect, you might tackle it for whatever period of time, but it will not solve the issue of people coming, people suffering, community having problems, etc., etc., etc. So what we are advocating for is to look at migration comprehensively. And I understand, by the way, that this is also the way the government is looking at the issue of migration, because there is a inter-ministerial working group that is devising a 5 years migration strategy. So obviously, I don't think that they will be looking at, and IOM and HCR participates as observer and as technical experts to this working group. I don't think that that working group will be looking at how we can continue to fill in an empty transit center for the next 5 years. They're going to be looking at issues that go beyond the immediate humanitarian assistance, because that's what the strategy over 5 years could need to be. And so that is what we are looking at. We're not saying the migrants that are here today are here to stay forever. What we're saying is the flow and the migration phenomenon will continue here, more or less, higher number, lower number, different route, will continue everywhere in the world. So how do we manage that flow and not just the individual here today? That's the solution-oriented suggestion that we're making.
Thank you.
I think I'm afraid we have to close. One last question. Yes, please.
Okay. Amer Martinović, novinar televizije Sarajevo. Pitanje se odnosi na činjenicu da jedan dio Bosne i Hercegovine, govorim ovdje konkretno o entitetu Republika Srpska, nije učinio ništa na zbrinjavanju migranata koji su došli u Bosnu i Hercegovinu. Da li ste u tim razgovorima sa tim vladama na svim nivoima, uključujući i vladu Republike Srpske, razgovarali o tome zašto ne žele da prime migrante i da se brinu o njima, kao što to čine u Federaciji Bosne i Hercegovine. Hvala lijepo.
I will provide a response, and then in case if Eugenio wants to chip in. We have been passing among some of the key messages at various levels the message of the shared responsibility across the whole territory of Bosnia and Herzegovina. So this has been a common key advocacy message that we as IOM, together also with the rest of the UN, continue to pass at all levels. A shared responsibility across the whole territory, because that would allow, of course, to create less burden on the community, reduce the number of people being hosted by every community, reduce possible tensions, reduce possible security problems, and having a much more localized approach to the response. Thank you. We are thanking everyone for this press point and for the attention that has been provided to this visit. And once more, on behalf of IOM, thank you. We have to go. Thank you.